Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Richard, and welcome back to the weekly watch list video sponsored by MarketSmith. And once again, this week, I'm casting a wide net and going through a whole bunch of stocks that are kind of on my radar. Ideally, in a short amount of time, we'll see what actually happens, but we'll go through their technical patterns, a little bit about their fundamentals, and I'll discuss kind of why it's got my eye. Not all of these are ready for next week, but this is the kind of general wheelhouse that I'm looking at as of this moment to find potential new leaders if this tradable rally really turns out to be something substantial. So just a little bit of context before we go into the watch list. Just looking at the NASDAQ, we remain in a longer term downtrend. We're coming up against some key levels, the 50 SMA from the downside. We've obviously got the Fed announcement later this week that could definitely add a bunch of volatility. So don't feel the need to press things, pedal to the metal right away. Wait for confirmation and make sure you're managing risk on all new buys and practicing progressive exposure. With that said, let's dive right in and start from the top. AMR, obviously this is an energy related coal name. We had a breakout above this DTL as well as the short-term pivot that I was watching last week. This was from that list. We got a little bit of weakness into the end of the week, and a lot of kind of oil and gas names saw this as well. So I'd love to see some kind of like flagging action, consolidation, and forming basically another higher low, breaking above this pivot right here. But definitely a name that's been showing relative strength. It's been outperforming this entire year. RS rating is 99 and great earnings and sales and great estimates for this year. Not so much for next year. So that is AMR. Moving on, we've got Biogen. Definitely buyable on Friday, outside day, breaking above this high. We're still, I believe, just below that or right at this key level. So we'll see how it acts. Maybe we get an inside day, and then you could do an inside day and up setup, managing risk either at this low or that inside day low, but definitely a name to have on your radar just because of this huge gap up. This is going to be a faster mover. And as always, when I'm looking at biotechs, there's some added risk here. So make sure you're managing risk, not only with a stop loss, but also with your position sizing. And in terms of fundamentals, not much in terms of metrics, but you do have a lot of fund ownership in this name, although it has been declining over the past 2 years. Calex, another recent gap up. This is one that I'm currently in, and we'll have to see what happens here. I'd love to see some more of consolidation, let that 21 EMA kind of catch up to price, and then kind of reconfirm higher through this kind of short-term pivot. But we'll have to see what happens. Nice reaction. You've got an earnings price of 47%. Nice sales growth, improving over the past few quarters, and estimates improving as well, and a nice trend in fund ownership over the past 2 years. CELH, this doesn't really have group confirmation, but it's back above the 21 EMA. Fantastic growth numbers in terms of earnings, sales, margins improving as well. Great estimates for 2022 and 2023. I haven't seen any other stocks with these type of numbers, and estimates are improving. That's big, but it has to get back above that 50 SMA, and we'd love to see that happen on volume. You could buy it honestly on Monday right through this high, kind of confirming that strength from that hammer candle. But you don't have too much volume on this Friday, which is one negative about that day. But I'd love to see a push up on volume, get through this kind of choppy area, and get back above that 50 SMA and have that kind of curl up under price as it kind of builds that base and gets back above 100 as well. But nice fund ownership trend and a bunch of high quality funds in here as well. CHX, another gap up on earnings. You've got a longer term trend line that it broke through, and this now just kind of needs a consolidation and a spot where you can manage risk and entry tactic after this overall setup. Great numbers here, and this is in the oil and gas drilling area, and this entire sector has been the strongest this year, pretty much. Great estimates as well in terms of annual EPS. CLH, this was on my radar last week. I'd love to see a consolidation before an all-time high attempt, and you can manage risk basically right at that swing low, enter through that pivot. But nice move above the moving averages, and a nice breakout on Friday through the short-term pivots. You basically could have been watching this area as well, managing risk either at this swing high or that 21 and 50 SMA, but definitely want to still have it on your radar before it attempts that all-time high breakout. Great numbers as well, great estimates into funds, high-quality funds investing as well. DCP, this is also in the oil and gas area. Great estimates, great earnings, especially last quarter. And I love how tight it was here within this range. And then on Friday, we had an outside day. Not huge volume, but I love to see fall through, breaking through that 40 level, as well as, this spot, the 39 area has been trouble. So we'll have to see whether it can push through on volume or whether it just reverses back below the moving averages, but nevertheless one to have on your radar, especially if you like those breakout trades. Not much fund ownership, definitely a drawback, and it's not the most liquid name, but one to watch if you're into these type of trades. DV, I bought this on this day, was stopped out shortly thereafter, but it's still not, broken in terms of the overall pattern. Just wasn't quite ready yet after this gap up. And we'll have to see whether it can kind of reset for some tight action against that 21 EMA, form a pivot of some sort, maybe through that 30 level, and basically just continue this breakout. I like how it's just above that 200 SMA. We're kind of curling under price here, and looking at a weekly, this is the first kind of major move or attempted move above from the bottom of this prior base consolidation. We do have earnings in 9 days, and if I don't mention that and there's a stock with earnings the next day, make sure you're checking yourself. You don't want to get trapped in a stock and not know that there's earning that next day and that you're basically gambling. So make sure you double check the earnings dates for any stock that you're interested in or are owning at this time. DVN, this is similar to AMR. We had a nice push up from a kind of early pivot up the right hand side, and then we had a basically retest of that downward trend line break or pivot. I'd love to see a few days sideways, then kind of breaking up through this pivot now, managing risk right at that swing low. Once again, super strong prior uptrend, RS rating 97, and earnings in 2 days, but great numbers overall, and definitely one to have on your radar. And we'll see if these names can hold up, or that basically the oil and gas sector will kind of roll over. We'll just have to wait and see. Right now, the trends are up within that group. EMPH, this had a nice gap up on earnings back through the 50 SMA and continued to power higher, even though the market kind of pulled back on that Thursday. You can see it was actually strong. Then a nice inside day consolidation on Friday. So the most aggressive traders could buy an inside day and up setup. It might be a little bit premature for that, but I'd love to see it consolidate right near 300 and form some type of higher low setup, managing risk right at this level and buying through some type of pivot entry. So that's what I'm kind of looking for EMPH, but definitely an overall theme to have on your radar. Energy Solar ranked 2 out of 197, and this stock has great earnings, sales, and estimates going forward, as well as fund ownership. And I like the power off the bottom, and now it just needs a consolidation to kind of get rid of those natural profit takers, so the overall trend can continue higher. So that is EMPH. Moving on, we've got GFS moving up the right hand side. Recent IPO, short-term flag here. Looking at it on a 60-minute chart, you can see you've got some early pivots here, and we'll have to see whether we can push through that on volume. I like this bar right here that happened on Friday, and yeah, I like the spot that's in, kind of forming out a base under this level. This is potentially an early kind of pivot right at this spot, and you can manage risk right at the 50 SMA or this Friday's low if you do buy some type of breakout through this level. GLNG, another one that is in the oil and gas transport area. This is forming a base consolidation after a really strong prior uptrend and moving up the right hand side again back through 50 SMA support there on Friday. So I'd love to see a little bit more of a consolidation, then a push through this prior pivot, managing risk right at that higher low. RS rating 98. Earnings due in 17 days, so you got a little bit more time with this one, but some decent numbers reported earlier this year. Moving on, we've got HRMY, and a lot of these type of names have been acting quite well. We've seen LLY, Amgen move out and break out into new all-time highs, so we'll have to see what happens with earnings. Never gamble just because other stocks are doing well. You never want to just buy a position before earnings and hope. You always got to manage risk, and overall decent fundamentals. A little bit of slowdown in terms of earnings growth, sales growth as well, margins staying strong, and we'll have to see whether it can basically continue its trend above the 21 EMA. INBX, nice action. You've got a pivot right at this prior level, holding near that 30 level, and I basically want to see a nice breakout on volume. We've got volume kind of declining as it's going sideways, and a really nice power off the bottom here. Looks like the highest volume in over a year at this point. No real fundamentals to speak of, so maybe this would just be a kind of day trade unless you know intimately the fundamentals here, but definitely be careful because once again, this is a more risky biotech. LNG forming a little bit of a consolidation right here. Once again, in the oil and gas area, nice earnings the most recent quarter. We've got earnings due in 4 days. So we'll just have to see what happens with this one. LTCM, a little bit wide and loose, but that's kind of its character. Moving up back towards that 50 SMA, just above it on Friday. Found support at that 21 EMA and the 30 level. And I'd love to see maybe it go sideways for a few days, form that pivot, and you could buy it right there, managing risk either, at this low at 30, at the 21 EMA, which would rise at this point, or that kind of low within that sideways consolidation range. Really great estimates for this year and fall through in 2023, and decent fund ownership as well. MedPace, another recent earnings gap up, and I'll be watching for these next week as well, with all the earnings that are being reported. And yeah, we'll just have to see if this can form a consolidation, go sideways, and give another spot to enter. Had a really nice move upwards, got a little bit ahead of itself, and now just needs a little bit of consolidation. And we'll have to see whether this continue on towards those all-time highs. Decent numbers here, and a subtle increasing trend in fund ownership, and one high-quality fund investing into this stock. Moving on, we've got OWEN, and this has earnings in one day, so keep that in mind. I love to see a gap up. We've seen a few of those within the space. Great earnings, sales, great earnings estimates for 2022, and a nice trend in fund ownership and 3 high-quality funds invested into that stock. PFHC, a recent IPO, forming a little bit of a W pattern right at this kind of prior pivot. I'd love to see some consolidation, a kind of handle form here, and then a breakthrough on volume towards those all-time highs. PI, another recent IPO, or not recent IPO, a recent gap up. I'd love to see a consolidation now for it to basically tighten up, allow us to get in. Great volume on this gap up. We had an earnings surprise of 100%, and volume change was huge, plus 950%. So that's definitely institutions telling us something. Great estimates for this year, and really nice fall through in 2023. Nice trend in fund ownership as well. PRTA, another biotech that had a gap up. Big hammer candle off the 21 EMA on Friday, watching for fall through to the upside through this high or even the 64 level. Pretty much the same thing. Once again, make sure you're managing risk with these IPOs or with these biotechs. They are a little bit more volatile and prone to gap downs. Roblox off the bottom. This trade isn't for everybody, but I like how it's back above the 200 SMA, consolidating right under this prior pivot or right near that pivot. And basically, you'd buy it through the short-term flag here. You've got earnings in 10 days, so maybe we get a gap up towards 60, but we'll have to see what happens with this name. Sales growth is decent. You can see that it's formed a kind of U-shaped bottoming process, so nice, gentle bottoming process here, and is forming higher lows as the market is forming lower lows right here, comparing these two periods. RS rating is a 73, which is surprising given how far this has fallen since all-time highs, but going to a weekly, this is kind of the first proper basing period since it's IPO'd. You had a little bit of a short one here, but now it's a little bit more of a mature company, and we'll see if we can start to get some more earnings in here and good guidance going forward. REGN, another one that's potentially viable through this area. Nice action on Friday. You could have bought it through this prior high, managing risk at that 21 EMA or this prior low, but we'll see if we get a fall through on volume right here and break out of this consolidation. SG, another IPO off these lows that's consolidating and kind of tightening up here, and we'll have to see whether we can push through on volume. We've got earnings in 9 days with this name. SRPT forming consolidation after a nice move up off these lows against the 50 SMA. You could buy it through this prior pivot. Nice action on Friday off that level, and we'll see if we get a push through on volume and ideally taking out the all-time highs as well. SGNG, a little bit of a short-term flag here. This has already kind of moved out of this consolidation, but you can manage risk either at the 21 EMA, this prior low, if we do push through on volume. It doesn't have to be a huge pickup in volume, but you definitely want to see nice price action because this is kind of a setup after that prior breakout. SWAV, this one shook me out on this day right here, undercutting that low, but I'm watching to see if it kind of resets, tightens off against that 50 SMA. Sorry, that's my dog, if you can hear that. See if we get another pivot here, and see if this can basically recover and form out this base a little bit more. UDMY, another name to watch. That's kind of a IPO that got hit pretty hard and now is consolidating, forming a stage 1 base. And we'll see if we can kind of get a breakout through here on volume. Once again, earnings in 3 days. Venom in the oil and gas space, you've got this pivot that's dealing with. I'd love to see maybe an inside day and then a push through on volume. And you've got great numbers here, great estimates for this year. Not too much fall through in 2023, but a nice increase in fund ownership. Overall, RS rating a 94. Wingstop, another gap up here. I want to see consolidation, then another entry tactic to get in here, managing risk at that prior swing low. Maybe using the HVC if it kind of pulls into that. You could buy it as it pushes back off of that, or just breaks out through this prior high. And that's pretty much it for these 30 names. Hopefully that didn't take too long. Let me know your thoughts, maybe your top 3 setups from this list down below in the comment section. Also, let me know if you stayed here and watched until the end. If you did, I really appreciate that. Drop a comment down below, and also remember to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.